My name is Fleur van Ooststroom-Brummel, and I am representing the European Commission, the Directorate General for Research and Innovation, and the unit which is in charge of climate and planetary boundaries research. There I work in the Biodiversity and Nature-based Solutions team, and my area of work is particularly on the private sector and finance side of biodiversity and nature-based solutions. And I'm the policy officer for a number of Horizon Europe projects within that area. And today I will take you through a couple of slides on the EU policy context for nature-based solutions investment. So I will make a short presentation to take you through the EU policy context for nature-based solutions investment. So in terms of the policy context, let's zoom out and start with the global context, which of course is very relevant for the EU policy context. So at the end of 2022, COP15 agreed on the Global Biodiversity Framework, or the GBF, and this framework provides the foundation for global action on biodiversity and complements the Paris Agreement for climate. Zooming into some elements specifically relevant for NBS investment is the increased clarity of financial flows to protect ecosystems globally. And especially Goal D, which requires the alignment of financial flows with both the targets and the vision of the framework, secures the focus on implementation of what's laid out by the framework. So this goal, along with several targets that reference financing of the private sector, provide a hook required to stimulate and scale up action for nature-based solutions and biodiversity. And the framework sets out that by 2030, public and private financial flows should be aligned with biodiversity objectives, that businesses assess and disclose nature-related risks, that biodiversity harmful subsidies are eliminated and reformed, and that biodiversity financing from all sources is doubled. And most governments are already underway to update their national biodiversity strategy and action plans that translate these goals and targets into their national policy and regulation, which will include financing strategies in terms of how this will be funded. Then zooming into the EU policy context, so the EU has increasingly been focusing on nature positive policies as part of its broader sustainability agenda. And this includes initiatives aimed at biodiversity conservation, ecosystem restoration, sustainable land use, and of course, nature-based solutions. And the key framework here is the European Green Deal. In terms of policies and strategies that come under the EU Green Deal, the main ones concerning NBS investment are the biodiversity strategy, the taxonomy regulation, the proposed nature restoration law, and the 2030 climate targets. And here I also want to note that the 2040 climate targets proposal was published earlier this year. And this proposal launches the process of setting sort of the next intermediate milestones towards the 2050 climate neutrality objective, and intends to ensure long-term predictability for stakeholders as well as for investors. And this is important due to the political unpredictability at the moment, and also especially because the climate and biodiversity crisis cannot be solved in isolation, and they need to be looked at together as symbiotic and reinforcing. And then finally, we also try to mainstream nature-based solutions as well as biodiversity more generally in all EU policies and regulation. For example, this includes explicit or implicit references in the climate adaptation strategy, the urban greening plans, the flood directives, the marine strategy framework, the zero pollution action plan, the bioeconomy strategy, and the list, goes on and on. So to zoom in, the EU biodiversity strategy for 2030 outlines specific actions to halt biodiversity loss and to restore ecosystems, including through nature-based solutions, emphasizing the importance of private sector investment in achieving these goals. And the strategy highlights the need for significant increases in public and private investment, making the most of all relevant EU programs and financing instruments. And one of the pillars of the strategy is transformative change. as you can see on the slide, which of course is necessary to tackle societal challenges, and which is why we are also mainstreaming biodiversity and nature-based solutions in the economy. Then, so the Green Deal encompasses various fiscal and financial policies to promote sustainability. And one of the key elements here includes the Sustainable Finance Strategy, which aims to integrate environmental factors into financial decision making. And under this, the EU taxonomy regulation establishes a classification system for environmentally sustainable economic activities. And under this regulation, last year, the EU adopted a delegated act on environmental considerations. And this constitutes the opportunity for increasing investment in natural capital and projects that substantially contribute to biodiversity, including nature-based solutions. Another key piece of EU legislation is the proposed nature restoration law, which sets out to restore at least 20% of Europe's land and sea areas by 2030 and all ecosystems in need of restoration by 2050, which of course will need a lot of finance to be achieved. And natural restoration plans, along with transparent monitoring and reporting, will help in implementing the framework. In terms of the status of the proposed law, I cannot give a comprehensive update. It has not yet been adopted by the Council, so we are all on the edge of our seat with our fingers crossed to see it adopted. One point so interesting to note is that the impact assessment of the nature restoration law shows that the benefits of investments into biodiversity far outweigh the initial cost of that investment, where €1 generates at least €8 of benefits, mainly in the form of ecosystem services. So such findings can further help stimulate more and more investment into nature-based solutions as well. So in terms of the RNI and Horizon Europe, we, as DG Research and Innovation, have invested a lot into biodiversity, with hundreds of projects supporting the implementation of the biodiversity strategy. And at EU level, we have also committed more broadly to providing 7.5% of annual spending under the multi-annual financial framework, so the MFF, which is the EU long-term budget, to biodiversity objectives in 2024, and this increases to 10% in 2026 and 2027. And this is throughout the EU budget, meaning that it applies to Horizon Europe, but also to cohesion funding, to Invest EU, and all other EU funding instruments. And this plays a key role in creating an enabling regulatory and market environment to achieve biodiversity goals. And on top of this 7.5% for biodiversity, we also have a 35% climate spending target for Horizon Europe. And as regards to the EU's external support to biodiversity, we've committed to doubling the external biodiversity financing, reaching a total of 7 billion, especially for the most vulnerable countries. So on this slide, I've provided some detail in terms of the nature-based solutions portfolio we have under Horizon 2020 and Horizon Europe. So the EU RNI funding have invested approximately 665 million in over 76 different NBS projects, counting over 1,300 partners in over 70 different countries. And project tests and these projects test and showcase the benefits of nature-based solutions, including in over 70 different cities. And these are within the EU as well as globally. And we also have 20 large-scale demonstration projects, again, which showcase the benefits of nature-based solutions. And this is, of course, important for making the case for nature-based solutions so that we can direct investment towards it. I won't go into detail of all the projects, but I really invite you to browse this brochure in your own time. You can find it on the European Commission's website. And there is also a group of projects under the heading of Nature Positive Economy, Finance and Insurance, which will be very relevant. So I also wanted to briefly highlight Biodiversa Plus, which is the co-funded European Biodiversity Partnership. And some of their flagship programs include work on biodiversity protection, on monitoring, on nature-based solutions, as well as on transformative change. And they're also developing a guide on the business and biodiversity landscape for European research and innovation. And this guide includes a chapter on the tools and methods for managing biodiversity in the finance sector. And the draft is already available online, and the final version will be published soon. So last year, we published with the European Investment Bank a report on investing in nature-based solutions. And this was partly to follow up on the UNEP State of Finance for Nature report, which essentially found that we need to double investment in nature-based solutions by 2025 and triple investment by 2030. And this report provides a comprehensive overview of the state of the market for investment into nature-based solutions. And the report found that mobilizing private investment to support the scale up of nature-based solutions, as well as the market for nature-based solutions, is key. The report found that by far the biggest barrier and challenge to increasing the level of private sector financing is that the majority of nature's benefits currently have no financial market value, and most biodiversity and nature-based solutions interventions produce a mix of public and private benefits. And unfortunately, the private benefits frequently don't exceed the total cost of the project. So on this slide, I've briefly summarized the main barriers to investment. Um, and since the publication of this report, the European Commission has set up a technical working group with the EIB to follow up on the report's recommendations. So the European research community on nature-based solutions and biodiversity is extremely active. I won't go into all of the things listed on this slide. Instead, I will share with the participants of the Finance Innovation Festival a booklet which we created on all the resources that these R&I projects have produced, so you can go through them in detail in your own time. A few very important resources which I would like to share, particularly relevant to this finance festival, are first of all the coordinated support action, so Network Nature, which can be looked at as the project of projects and coordinates all the different nature-based solutions projects, have established a European and global platform allowing sort of all interested stakeholders to access and contribute innovative knowledge and expertise on NBS. And this is comprehensive, it's up to date, it's open, user-oriented, sort of online platform. So if you're not familiar with this, I really recommend you to visit the Network Nature website. And then Network Nature also has a specific work package which focuses on enhancing attractiveness of nature-based solutions for investors and entrepreneurs. And this will also map and consider all the work already done by other Horizon 2020 and Horizon Europe projects. And similarly, the horizontal task force 3 of Network Nature, which aims to support and accelerate private sector uptake and stimulate private investments, very actively works within this area. There are, of course, many other resources which are very relevant, but too many to name in this short presentation. So again, I advise you to consult the booklet we will share after this presentation. Yes, thank you very much for your attention, and for listening to my presentation.